Hello all. In this video, we'll be having a quick review of chapter 8 in the ICSE Environmental Science syllabus, that is waste. Now, as per the syllabus given by ICSE, these are the two subtopics that we'll be looking at. First, how the solid waste has led our society to be called as a throwaway society. We'll be looking at what are the different types of solid waste, and then we'll also be looking at the options for the future. What is the way forward? So waste is any material that is not useful to us and which is discarded or thrown away by us. That's exactly the reason why our society has now come out to be a throwaway society. That is, we use a particular material, especially solid waste. We use it, and then when it is of no more use to us, we throw it away instead of reusing it, recycling it, repairing and using it. These are not done in the society, and that is why it is called as a throwaway society. This is especially true of the developed nations where the concept of repairing does not exist. They use and throw away the waste, that is throw away the material as waste. That is why it is called as a throwaway society. Now, what is the problem with this? All of the material that is thrown away leads to accumulation. So there is accumulation of waste one by one, accumulation of electronic items, accumulation of plastic items. We are unable to do anything about it. That is the reason waste management is very necessary, because it poses a threat to the environment. There's so much waste around us on the land, in the water bodies, that from there it can enter into the biological system. It can, it is a breeding ground for flies. So from there we have a lot of diseases that are spreading. So waste has to be managed, and waste management is a big challenge across the world. Before we look at how the waste is managed and what we can do, let's look at what are the different sources of waste. So we have, first and foremost, domestic waste. Domestic waste is the waste that comes from the kitchen or from the packaging materials in houses, or anything that is coming from the domestic setup. The house setup is what we call as domestic waste. This mainly comprises of kitchen waste, that is food waste. Other than that, it can also comprise of food containers or cardboard that is thrown away from the household material. The second one is industrial waste. This includes mainly metal, cement, paper and pulp industries also generate a lot of industrial waste. Textile industries generate waste. Mining industries generate waste. There's a lot of fly ash that is generated. All of these are comprising, or that is the waste that is coming from the industries, is termed as the industrial waste. The third one is biomedical waste. This is highly toxic waste because it is coming from the hospitals, it is coming from the medical instruments, it is coming from research labs, and these are wastes which are very, very toxic. They are pathogenic. So if we do not take care of them before throwing, if we do not, disinfect it before throwing away, people who handle it definitely are prone to falling ill, or they are prone to certain diseases. Lastly, we have e-waste. E-waste is electronic waste. So as of now, electronic waste is one of the biggest challenges, because we have still not come up with a foolproof way of discarding electronic equipments or discarding any kind of electronic devices. So these are the four sources of waste, or you can say the types of waste based on their sources. We also have types of waste based on how easily they can be broken down. So we have biodegradable and non-biodegradable waste. Biodegradable wastes are those which can be broken down by microorganisms. That is, they can be degraded by living organisms. This includes the fecal matter. This includes the plant and animal remains, dead plants, dead animals, the grass cuttings, the food that is thrown away from the households. Sometimes even some pesticides can be eaten up by the microorganisms. So all of these are comprised of biodegradable waste. However, non-biodegradable wastes are the ones which are actually dangerous. Why? Because they cannot be broken down by any kind of microorganisms or wind or water. None of the natural agents are able to break it down, and we really don't know what to do with it. For example, plastic. Plastic is the biggest non-biodegradable waste which is causing a problem for us in the world. Or even glass items, scrap metals that are coming out. All of these are non-biodegradable. They don't break down completely by the microorganisms, and then they pose a big threat to the environment. So these are the different types of waste, and the common ways of disposing these wastes are landfills or by incineration. These are the two common mechanisms. There are many, many more methods, but these are the two most common ones. Landfills are large areas where the waste is discarded. Now, how a sanitary landfill has to be made is, they'll first discard the waste, the solid waste, whatever is generated will be dumped on the land, on the site, and then it will be covered. This waste will be covered with soil so that it can get decomposed over a period of time. This is called as a sanitary landfill. Now, the problem with the landfill is you are supposed to bury the waste inside the land and then cover it up. But in most cases, what you see on the landfill is this. You can see areas, like huge areas, hectares and hectares of open waste, which is causing a lot of toxicity to the people around. So landfills, one problem is it requires a huge land requirement, and secondly it interferes with the nature and the landscape. What you see over here, that landscape is completely marred due to the deposition of the waste. Not only that, it also releases a lot of gases, and even there's a lot of water leachate that is coming out of it, which is toxic. So all of those are the disadvantages of a landfill, but the reason it is very commonly used is because it is quite cost effective. Problem is, once you run out of land, then you don't know what to do with the garbage, what you do with the waste. The second common method of taking care of the waste or solid waste management is using incineration. Incineration meaning combustion, burning the waste at a very high temperature using basically heat or thermal treatment. So what you do over here is you put the waste through a furnace, and then in that furnace the temperature is so high that it burns all the waste, and then the ash is being generated, which is deposited. This is very common in countries or areas which don't have much land. For example, in Japan, this is very common because they have scarcity of land. They're a very small country and they don't have place for landfills. So this is also one of the methods that is used. It reduces most of the waste. So all the big kilograms of waste which are put inside are all coming out in the form of ash, which weighs hardly a few grams. And not only that, the heat that is used over here can be used for generating steam as well. So it has other uses as well. But the problem is the gases that are released from this, the ash that comes out of this is definitely toxic. Also, that if there are some heavy metals in the waste, that can again lead to a phenomenon called as bioaccumulation. So that again causes a big problem in the environment. And biggest of all, the problem is that the cost is very, very high because you have to put all of the waste inside huge furnaces for combustion. So the cost is very high. These are two of the common methods of managing the solid waste or of disposing the waste. But this is not the final solution. This is not the final answer. We have now come up with better answers, and those are the options that we are going to see. So the first option is or you can say the best answer for all of this, the easiest way to manage waste is by following the principle of 3 R's. What are the 3 R's? Reduce, reuse, and recycle in this hierarchy. This is the waste hierarchy. What does that mean? Why is it called as waste hierarchy? Because this is the order of priority of action which we need to take to manage the waste. We first need to make sure that we reduce the amount of waste generated. We need to produce less waste. How do we produce less waste? We will be looking at how we can use other methods such as composting and, ensure that finally the amount of waste that is coming for dumping, say into the landfill, is very less. So you need to reduce the waste that is getting generated. Secondly, once the waste has been generated, you check whether you can reuse that waste. Can you segregate it and maybe, reuse it? Can you send it to an industry which can break it down and then use some of its parts for their own industry? Can you reuse that particular waste? Don't dump it on the land. Before you dump it on the land, can you reuse the waste? And lastly, if you cannot reduce and you were not able to reuse, then see if you can recycle the waste. You convert it into a useful product. For example, you use cardboard from the paper that is, being discarded. Convert that into cardboard. Or best part of recycle is for plastics, for metals, for glass. All of those can be recycled. So either you reduce the waste, then you reuse the waste. So you try to, give it to someone else who will use it. You may not use it, but someone else who is using, or you yourself don't go for buying a new TV. Try reusing it as much as possible. If nothing works out, try to recycle. And if none of these happen, then you go for different methods of waste management. So these are the 3 R's that are followed, and which is very important. These are the best way to manage waste. Not only that, in this 3 R's itself, we also have segregation. So not only should we reduce, reuse, and recycle, we also need to segregate the waste so that we can follow these 3 principles. What is the meaning of segregation? It means you differentiate the waste into biodegradable and non-biodegradable items so that they can be accordingly either reused or recycled. How do we reuse and recycle them? So we can use, or we can convert them into compost. Now compost is manure. It is a nutrient that is useful for the fertility of the soil. It adds nutrients into the soil so that plants can grow. So all of the organic matter is the biological matter which is generated in the waste, and this organic matter forms 35 to 40% of the municipal solid waste. So you can imagine almost half of the waste that is generated daily is having organic matter, and all of the organic matter can be converted into compost. So you can actually cut down your waste generation by 40% every day if every house does composting. Now what is composting? Composting is where you convert that organic matter into manure or into compost, which is then used for fertilizing the plants. This can be done by various methods. We have aerobic as well as anaerobic methods. Many of you might be having this at your homes as well. You might be having compost bins like this, or you might be buying compost from the farms, or in your houses they may be coming for collection of the organic matter so that that can be converted into compost on a common level. But the advantages of this is that it is a clean method, it's a cheap method, quite economical, and it is safe. Safe for whom? Safe for the environment. It is highly environment friendly. So what we are doing here is we are recycling the organic waste into nutrients which is present in the soil. So you're bringing back the nutrients into the soil. This means if you are cutting down 40% of the waste, because 40% of the organic waste is being converted into compost, it means you need less space for landfill. You don't have to worry about land space for converting into a landfill. Not only that, we know that organic fertilizers are better than chemical fertilizers. So this is actually very good for the soil and for the environment as well. This is one way in which we can recycle the waste. The second way is by vermiculture. Vermiculture is also called as worm farming. Here we are producing compost with the help of earthworms. That's why it's called as vermiculture or vermicomposting or vermicompost. We are culturing the earthworms, and then from the culture we are producing compost. There's also one more term over here, vermicast, which is the worm excreta. So vermicast, vermicompost, vermiculture, all of it relates to using worms. Which worms? Earthworms for production of compost. So these earthworms act as aerators. They are crushing it, they are mixing the organic material, and then they are finally giving us the compost material. The advantages of this is that, again, it is highly eco-friendly, it is environment friendly, it's a natural fertilizer which is adding nutrients to the soil. There are no adverse effects on the soil or on the environment or on the plant. So it's actually very good for the plant and the soil. It also improves the soil's texture, the aeration in the soil, the water retention capacity. How much water can the soil hold? All that is being improved due to the vermicompost. And not only that, because it is improving all these parameters of the soil, it is improving the root growth, and we have seen that when we apply vermicompost to a plant does exceptionally well. So it's overall, you can say it's very good for the plant as well as the environment. The fourth one is the use of biotechnology. So using living organisms or living organisms products to form some kind of a technology for a commercial purpose. So you're using living organisms and using them commercially. That is what is called as biotechnology, controlled use of microorganisms. In this case, we are using biotechnology for solid waste management. How do we use that? So there are a lot of bacteria which are known to break down toxic waste. For example, pesticides. Many pesticides are difficult to break down because they are chemicals which humans made. But now we have found there are a lot of bacteria, there are a lot of microorganisms, fungi, which are able to break down these toxic waste. Or other items include the mining waste. There are organisms which are able to, remove the metals from the mining waste. There are organisms which can eat up oil. So when there are oil spills in the ocean, they are able to break down that particular oil spill. They are able to clear up that oil spill. There are organisms which have been known to break down plastics, though not completely, but yes, a little bit of breakdown is happening. So there a lot of research is happening because we are now coming to know about different organisms which are able to break down complex toxic substances. We can use, and we have been using, organisms in sewage treatment. So sewage again is a form of waste, and how we use organisms over there, that is basically to clean up the sewage. We also have been producing bioplastics. Bioplastics are plastics produced from microorganisms which are biodegradable. So they are not like the usual plastics. You are adding some kind of plant starch over there, and then That is making the plastic biodegradable. So it's very environment friendly. This is again one more option that we have for managing the solid waste in future. The last one is using alternative materials, alternatives to any material that we use. This here there are umpteen number of examples. You can write examples from your daily life as well. So what we are trying to look over here is find an alternative to wood, because we know that if I need anything made of wood, I have to cut down a tree, and I don't want to cut down a tree. I want to make it environment friendly. So instead of using papers or tissues or diapers or sanitary pads which are having cotton and plastic in them, or furniture, instead of going for wooden counterparts, you go for other materials in the same category. So one example is using jute bags or cloth bags instead of using plastic bags. This change has already come in many cities of India, where the plastic bags are banned because they are one time use plastic bags. So you instead go for some other eco-friendly alternative. Or another alternative is using biogas. So you are having a lot of waste. You convert that waste into biogas and then start using that biogas instead of fossil fuel. Again, you are not only managing the solid waste problem, you are also taking care of the energy problem. Using compost instead of chemical fertilizers, same thing. So you convert the waste into compost and then add this into the soil. It provides nutrients for the soil and it also takes care of your waste. Or using, say, metal glasses, or dry leaves, glasses made up of dried leaves, or glasses made up of some other eco-friendly material, instead of using disposable plastic glasses or disposable paper glasses. So this is again one method of, it's an alternative to the regular materials that we use. Or using recycled paper, converting paper into, recycling it into paper or into some other cardboard material and then using that. Or instead of obtaining pulp from the regular wood or cotton plant, you instead use pulp from flax plant or wheat plant or hemp plant. Those are also eco-friendly alternatives. So finding an alternative to any material that we use is also a good way to manage solid waste in the future. So this was about the management of solid waste, which can be of either degradable or biodegradable type. And we know that solid waste is usually dumped into the landfill or it is incinerated or burnt. But how can we convert the solid waste into some kind of treasure in the future is what I have spoken about in this video. I do hope it was useful to all of you. Thank you.